We now present For the Record.
Texas lawmakers flee their state just like Wisconsin lawmakers did back in 2011. We take a look back in history with a state senator who was there. And later, we travel to Reedsburg to sit down with the new Democratic State Party Chair, and Ellie LaLiberte shares an update on last year's school shooter.
Welcome to For the Record. I'm Will Keneally. We'll get to those stories and more, but first we start with Governor Evers announcing more than $100 million in building projects that were approved by the state's Building Commission. That includes sidewalk reconstruction around the state capitol, building demolitions at UW-Oshkosh, Platteville, and Parkside, and the commission also accepted an in-kind donation to renovate the lighting and rigging system at the Al Ringling Theater in Baraboo. Now, the commission approved the projects at a meeting this week at the Wisconsin State Fair. Now, one of the two inmates involved in the death of a corrections officer at the state's youth prison was sentenced this week to 5 years in prison. That corrections officer, Corey Prue, was killed last year after being beaten by a juvenile inmate. Now, that inmate faces a count of first-degree reckless homicide. The inmate that was sentenced this week pleaded guilty to being party to the crime of battery. Now, across Wisconsin, many federal lawmakers have returned home as part of their August recess. Now, we've shown you scenes from some town halls that these reps are holding, but some are traveling to the state fair, for example. That included Northwood's Congressman Tom Tiffany, who spoke with our Milwaukee affiliate about how federal funding should be steered towards us here in Dane County.
Yeah, they should lose their federal funding if they're not going to follow federal law. I mean, think about it. We just had 2 teenagers get killed over in Dane County as a result of a repeat offense, drunk driving, illegal alien, repeat offense. And 2 young people lost their lives as a result of that. If Dane County was reporting people when they committed crimes like that who are here illegally, ICE would take care of that problem.
The incident that Tiffany is referring to there is a crash that happened last month. An alleged drunk driver was driving the wrong way down the interstate north of Madison and killed 2 teens from Minnesota. Now, Federal Immigration and Customs Enforcement issued a detainer against that suspect, saying that she was an undocumented immigrant. Dane County Sheriff Calvin Barrett, though, denied that request from ICE to turn her over, saying that she should work through the court process here in Dane County for her actions. The Wisconsin Elections Commission deactivated more than 192,000 voter registrations, a process that is required every 2 years by law. The commission deactivates the registration for people who have not voted in the past 4 years and who have not responded to mailers from the WEC. The commission says that this helps ensure the integrity of the statewide voter database. And in D.C. this week, former Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker spoke at the National Conservative Student Conference. Since leaving office, Walker has led a youth conservative organization, Young America's Foundation. Now, he and Secretary of Education Linda McMahon discussed the future of both K-12 and higher education and the power they say should be in the hands of the states.
Send the power, the resources and the responsibilities back to the states, but more importantly to the schools and to the parents and families to make a difference. The president's been out front giving you that charge going forward, taking a series of actions, but long term to make that permanent, we need the help of the Congress.
Now, Walker also mentioned how he believes Act 10, the 2011 rule that got rid of collective bargaining for many public sector employees in Wisconsin, should be a model other states follow to, quote, challenge the status quo. And speaking of Act 10, echoes from those 2011 protests that rocked Madison have resurfaced again this week. But it wasn't Wisconsin Democrats fleeing the state for Illinois this time. Texas Democrats left their state to deny the Republican majority in their state a quorum needed to conduct their business. At issue, ongoing attempts to redraw the state's congressional maps. Now, the plan's Republican author has acknowledged that the proposed map is designed to help the GOP pick up 5 seats in Texas, something that President Trump is pushing to do. Now, that's in order to preserve the party's slim majority in Congress. And some of those Texas lawmakers gathered with other state legislators in Boston this week as part of the National Conference on State Legislatures. Now, that included a cohort of Wisconsin state lawmakers who joined the Texas state reps on the steps of the Massachusetts State House on Wednesday.
And all of you inspire us in Texas, our House colleagues, to continue this fight, because there's no price more worthy, more just than to give yourself of your community as public servants to represent the 200,000 people that I represent in Houston.
Now, with the Texas Democrats leaving and the echoes there of Act 10, we sat down with former Democratic State Senator Fred Risser, one of the Wisconsin 14 senators who fled to Illinois, about that legacy and what advice he would give to those lawmakers.
So I want to initially get a sense of what you hope your legacy in politics will be. My legacy, well, I think that my 64 years as representing the Madison community is evident that I was doing the right thing. I kept getting reelected, which is very nice to have happen. My legacy is the fourth in line after my ancestors. As you may know, I'm the fourth generation to represent the Madison community in the state legislature. And I'm the fourth political party, believe it or not. I'm the only Democrat. My dad served 3 terms as state senator as a progressive when the progressive. My grandfather, Ernest Warner, after whom Warner Park was named, served as a Republican, progressive Republican. And my great-grandfather, who lost an arm in the Civil War, was originally elected as a Unionist, and then second time he was elected as a Republican. So I got 4 political parties and 4 generations. And my legacy is I'm the fourth one in line, I guess.
Well, I was fascinated when people retire. If you could put your name on something, the Fred Risser blank, what would you want your name on?
I would like, if you really want to know, I'm interested in the environment. And I think state parks are wonderful. I think county parks and city parks are wonderful. And if my name was to go on something for posterity, I'd like it on a piece of real estate.
Perfect. So I imagine a lot in politics has changed from the 1950s to
Yes.
where we are now. How would you describe some of that change?
Well, when I got in, it was part-time. I was a full-time lawyer, and so I ran for office just as a part-time job. We were only in for 6 months out of a 2-year period. Then after the 6 months was up, we'd adjourn and go back to full-time private practice. And it's quite changed since then. When I started out, there were no full-time legislators. They couldn't afford it. They were only there for a couple months out of a 2-year period. And now we have a situation where many legislators consider themselves full-time. And another thing is that when I started out, it wasn't a money game. We didn't have to spend so much money. Now they're spending over $1 million for a job that pays $50,000. It doesn't make sense to me. And quite honestly, that's a part of politics that I don't really like.
When you see lawmakers, similar to where you would have been back in 2011, in Texas now, leave the state over an issue like gerrymandering, what goes through your mind when you see those images on TV?
Well, I think it's tragic that has happened. I mean, it shouldn't have happened in the first place. Apparently what's gone on, Texas broke the rules, you might say, of reapportioning every 10 years, decided to apportion early for the express purpose of having more persons elected as Republicans than Democrats. And I think that's a tragic mistake. Reapportionment should be helping government rather than hurting government. And the idea of reapportioning in order just to get more people on your side doesn't make sense to me, and it's a mistake. It's a terrible mistake.
So we see the Texas lawmakers do it over gerrymandering now. Wisconsin Democrats did it over that budget bill back in 2011. What do you say would be an issue that rises to that level where lawmakers would need to break quorum?
Well, there was a difference. We left because they were voting on a particular bill affecting the labor rights of constituents, and that could always be changed. What's happening in Texas is they're going out in order to protest the fact that they're reapportioning out of order, and specifically to change the makeup of the Congress of the United States. I think it's a much more tragic reason, and it certainly isn't good government by any means. I'm hopeful that it'll work out, but it should never have started in the first place.
Yeah, and I know we're early yet, but what advice would you give to those Texas lawmakers?
it's hard to know what's going on in Texas here in Wisconsin. I can tell you what we did in Wisconsin, and we kept communicating with the state, even though we were out of state. We had constant talking with not only our staffs, but the other side. We were negotiating all the time, and it was known that we were going to be coming back shortly, and we wanted to just protest that particular vote. In Texas, it's much more serious. They're trying to increase the number of congressmen on one party over another party, and then other states are going to think of doing the whole thing, and quite frankly, it's going to ruin the whole idea of good reapportionment. This is bad reapportionment in Texas.
When we come back, reporter Ellie LaLiberte shares the latest on the accused Madison school shooter from last December. And later, we travel to Reedsburg to sit down with the new Democratic State Party chair. We'll be right back with more For the Record right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. The mother of the 15-year-old girl who opened fire at Abundant Life Christian School last December is dead from an apparent suicide. Now, Ruppnow's 15-year-old daughter opened fire at ALCS on December 16th, killing a student, a teacher, and injuring 6 more, then dying by suicide herself. Now, reporter Ellie LaLiberte joins us now for the latest. Now, what do we know about this apparent suicide?
Yeah, so Janesville Police Lieutenant was able to independently confirm to me that Melissa Ruppnow is dead from an apparent suicide. She couldn't really elaborate much more because this is an ongoing investigation. What we do know is that police were dispatched to a home on Janesville's northwest side around 11:30 in the morning earlier this month. Again, still waiting on details. This is an ongoing investigation.
Now, her ex-husband, too, faces charges related to that school shooting. What do we know from there so far? Yeah,
so Jeffrey Ruppnow was arrested early in the morning on May 8th. What we do know so far is he's facing felony charges. That includes 2 counts of intent to sell a dangerous weapon to a minor and 1 count of contributing to child delinquency. Now, he's next expected back in court on September 19th for a bond hearing, and then again on September 26th for a pretrial conference.
Now, some court records provide insight into this case, especially through that criminal complaint. Can you walk us through what that shares?
Yeah, so prosecutors allege that the shooter had access to guns in the home, and they also allege that she had a history of mental health issues that her father was indeed aware of. Now, also in the complaint, there was an interview that Melissa did with detectives, and I'm quoting from that here. She says, quote, "The therapist said that she had PTSD from her dad in my relationship." Now, further court records show that from the period of 2014 to 2021, Melissa and Jeffrey Ruppnow divorced, remarried, and then divorced again. The shooter did live with her father, Jeffrey Ruppnow. Now, I also do want to note that both Melissa and Jeffrey did cooperate with detectives when this was an ongoing investigation back in December.
Ellie, thanks so much for following this for us. We really appreciate your work.
Thank you.
Now, when we come back, we take you to Reedsburg, Wisconsin to check in with the new Democratic State Party chair about the future of the party. We'll be right back with more For the Record right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. Joining you here from Reedsburg, Wisconsin, which is the home for our next guest, the new Democratic State Party Chair, Devin Remaker. Now, it comes at a time of transition for the Democratic Party, both locally and nationally. He joins us now with more. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
In the last couple of weeks, we saw that Evers announced that he will not seek a 3rd term. If you're in a position to, can I ask you, would you have wanted to see him run again?
Absolutely, yeah. I've been very clear. I absolutely was hoping that the governor would run again, but I completely respect and understand his decision not to. He has been a tremendous governor for the state of Wisconsin, a tremendous leader for our party, and a great ally. He put aside his own re-election effort to help support the state party's work for state legislative races here in Wisconsin. He has held the line against attacks against our democracy, against the freedom to choose here in Wisconsin. So I think he certainly earned his next chapter in life.
So I'd heard anecdotally some frustration from some Democrats for the possibility that this could be a very expensive primary come next August, when that money could be spent, other places, down ballot races, for example, like the state Senate, state assembly. How do you kind of, as the state party chair, keep the peace and kind of keep the money going where it's supposed to be going?
Well, I'm not in the business of telling anybody they shouldn't donate to anybody, but ultimately I think that there are a lot of people, donors, volunteers, activists, who are sick of seeing Democrats beat up on other Democrats. And I don't think we're going to see that from our primary. I've spoken to quite a few of the folks who may be considering or have already announced a run, and I think everybody wants to make sure this is a dialogue focused on positive visions for the future, and not something that, leaves a fracture within the party. So I'm very encouraged by that. I hope that we continue to see that process play out. And for folks that don't want to pick a side, and I think that we're going to have quite a few really great Democrats running in this primary at the end of the day. If you don't want to pick a side, the Democratic Party of Wisconsin is going to be working to support whoever the nominee is come August, because we are neutral in the primary until that point in time, and people can kind of, make sure that we have the resources we need to win up and down the ballot regardless. I think that I have a mindset of abundance, not scarcity. I think we're all going to have the resources we need at the end of the day.
So I know you're likely not going to name a name per se, but what kind of qualities would you want to see of the candidate that emerges as the Democratic nominee in that gubernatorial race?
I think that there are a variety of ways to reach voters and win in this state. And I think that there are many different candidates that can kind of fit different molds. Ultimately, I want to make sure that the Democratic Party of Wisconsin is able to support whatever that candidate's unique vision, unique pathway to victory is. I think it's very important to do what we can to open up multiple pathways in multiple scenarios to ensure that we have as many ways to ensure victory in November as possible. If I were given advice, I would say make sure to talk about how you're fighting for the working class, have a positive, optimistic economic vision for the future that reaches people in urban, rural, and suburban areas. I think that's going to be really important to making sure our party grows and reaches people in the midterm.
And what do you make of the Republican field? Is there anybody that you would want Democrats to run against?
Well, I mean, I'm not too impressed by the Republican field right now. Josh Goman is not a very notable personality. I'll just say that. Bill Berrien, I am not sure he's going to make it out of his primary. I think it's pretty tough these days to have spent tens of thousands of dollars supporting Trump's primary opponent in 2024. I mean, we've just seen how vindictive Trump and the MAGA movement is. I know he's taken a lot of flack from the conservative establishment here in Wisconsin already. So, I'm not too concerned about anyone I see. I've heard some speculation about other names, but honestly, I think the problem is the Republican Party isn't the Republican Party that people used to know. It is Trump's party. It is the MAGA party. You sort of have to appease him in order to become the nominee, and I think that is exactly why folks are going to have a difficult time appealing to the broader electorate in the general election.
So you were talking earlier about the working class. In some of the 2024 postmortems, we've seen some criticism for Democrats not kind of resonating with that working class voter. Is there a path forward for Wisconsin Democrats to kind of reintegrate those people into the Democratic Party at all?
Absolutely. Well, part of it comes from showing up, reaching out, and making sure that we talk about policies that people can understand that impact their day-to-day life. And that's sort of what I'm talking about with a positive, optimistic vision for the future, and also clearly identifying what the problem is. When I say working class, a lot of people might think that I'm just talking about, blue collar or, labor. But really, I think the working class is a little bit bigger than that. Really, I think a lot of the problems and the impacts that people have had on their lives, and what's driving the things like the big, awful bill that cut Medicaid, that took food out of hungry people's mouths. We're not even talking about the 1% that's behind that stuff anymore. It's like the 0.01%. This isn't Uncle Bob that owns an HVAC company and is doing quite well for himself somewhere with a nice lake house in Wisconsin. These are people with billions and billions of dollars that are essentially trying to privatize our entire lives, our schools, our health cares, our communities, heck, even retirement homes. I mean, there are so many seniors in this state and across the country that can't even leave anything to their family because it all gets taken away from these expensive facilities. Ultimately, I think that this is really what is at the root of so many problems. And I think that clearly communicating that and showing that we are on the side of people who just want to be able to preserve the American dream, work hard, get good grades, go to school or tech school or get a good job, get ahead, put that deal back on the table, because I think that 0.01% corporate oligarchs has taken it off the table.
What we've seen from Democrats nationally recently is this fight over redistricting. Certainly that's coming from President Trump down to the Texas Republicans. But we've seen the DLCC say that that should be on the table for Democrats to redistrict across the board here. If Democrats win a trifecta after 2026, is that something that you would push Democrats in the Capitol to just redraw both the legislative and congressional maps?
Well, I don't believe in unilateral disarmament, but my job is to focus on winning the elections, and I'll leave it up to policymakers to figure out what comes next.
And how close would Democrats be to getting that trifecta? I know it's closer in the state Senate. Certainly.
Yeah, I think we're incredibly close, and I'm incredibly optimistic. You know, we've had some really strong candidates already announced for many legislative seats. I think we're going to see a lot more through the remainder of this year, and ultimately being, you know, basically 2 in the Senate and 5 of the Assembly away. I think that gives us a really clear path. What my goal is as state party chair is to shoot above that mark, is to open up as many pathways to victory for each of those majorities as possible. And I think with great candidates, a good environment, we can reach a little bit further than Republicans might be expecting and spread them thin.
All right, well, Devin Remaker, thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. Thanks for coming up here. Appreciate it.
Yeah, it's been great. Now, when we come back, Wisconsin loses an icon. We'll be back from the studio with more For the Record right after this. Welcome back to For the Record. Now, it's rare that you get Tom Hanks to play you in a movie, but that's the honor given to Jim Lovell here, the commander of the Apollo 13 mission, whom Tom Hanks portrayed in that 1995 film. Now, Lovell passed away this week at the age of 97. Though born in Ohio, Lovell later moved to Milwaukee and eventually attended UW-Madison before transferring to the Naval Academy. Now, he ended up flying to the moon twice, but never ended up setting foot on the moon because of that fateful Apollo 13 mission. Now, a reminder that you can watch full episodes of the show, as well as expanded interviews on our website at channel3000.com. That does it for us this week. I'm Will Keneally. Have a great rest of your weekend.
This has been For the Record.